who has very large breasts because she's making money on it and it makes her happy and everybody's happy about it, I don't have any problem with that. But when you get into the body dysmorphic thing, when someone comes and I'm a little suspect about their own motivations, or I can tell instantaneously that this is never going to be the end of it. There's going to be something else, and there's going to be something else. And what happens with someone who has that problem is that they obsess over something, and they think that doing this quick surgical procedure is going to fix it.
It's going to fill that hole in them.
Yeah, and that hole's never filled.
This is going to hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast. She had both her breasts removed as a preventative measure. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's upside. There's a plus and a minus to that. I see. Hey, listen, it's great. You're getting ahead of the curve until it hits you, but at the same time, it's very elitist, in my opinion, in order to do that, because not everybody has that option. Yeah,
100%. And not everybody gets offered the option to even know that they need it, right? Because you need to have a blood test, and it's a special blood test, and it has to go to a special lab to find out that you have the gene. And if you have the gene, then you have, then you talk to the plastic surgeon, and then you get given the option in order to do that. And
have you come across this?
Right. Sure. Yeah, we do prophylactic mastectomies for patients who have BRCA.
Prophylactic?
Yeah, prophylactic.
Yeah, write that down.
Well, the only other prophylactic I've ever heard of is not.
Of course, I was going to go there, right?
You got to realize where his brain runs.
Prophylactic means you're doing it to avoid something else, right? To protect against something else.
That makes
right?
sense.
But no, in a case like that, you could actually get your breast removed and get implants put in. Will that prevent breast cancer?
Yes.
Really? 100%?
Yeah. So there's a gene you can inherit generally from your mother's side called the BRCA gene. And there are some other genes now, too, that they're finding. But mostly the BRCA gene, it means that if you have a certain type of BRCA gene, you have an 80% chance of getting breast cancer in your lifetime. So, that's a kind of a no-brainer if you know that you have that and you know you're going to get breast cancer. If you remove the breasts, you can reduce the risk of getting breast cancer by about 96 to 98%.
Wow!
So that's a big, that's a win-win. That's not a lot of thinking about it. If you reduced it by 15% or 30%, that would be a much bigger That would be a much bigger choice, I think. But this is kind of a no-brainer. It's like you can remove, and the only reason it's 98% is because you can't physically remove 100% of the breast tissue. So that's the only reason why it's not 100%.
Nothing in life is 100% except death.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
I'm thinking about the entire scope of your practice, specifically as it relates to boobs.
Right.
Boobs.
Because it's not all boobs either.
But
he said boobs.
Yeah, so I'm trying to make sure I hit all the points of what you do. You do augmentations, you do reductions, you do lumpectomies, you do... And I imagine you do some men, too, because breast
I
implants
don't do the lumpectomies, actually. There's a difference between myself and a breast surgeon, who is a general surgeon, is also a cancer surgeon. Mm-hmm. So technically, I'm not a cancer surgeon for breast because I'm not removing the cancer.
You come in afterwards.
I do. I come in and just
after the engine's rebuilt,
part.
You come in. Put the tires back
with
on.
oil.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Before I came. There's two issues when you talk about breast cancer. There's the cancer issue, and then there's the amputation issue. There's the reconstructive issue, what you're removing. And so my part is really the reconstructive portion. Although what usually happens is every woman who finds out she has cancer from their gynecologist or their breast surgeon or the person who did their mammography or whoever they found it out, they start processing it, and then they come see me. And so by the time they get to me, they've sort of just started to formulate all the questions that they might have about the cancer. So if I don't know how to answer those questions, I'm not doing my job either. So even though I'm not the cancer surgeon, I end up dealing with that issue.
You have to school yourself in that.
Sure.
In the whole cancer process,
sure.
So you have the answers.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with men these days too.
So men get breast cancer.
Yeah.
Lots of people think, well, how can they get breast cancer? That men have breast tissue, and so they do get breast cancer. Certainly, it's a smaller percentage.
For a man, that's got to be an incredibly emasculating experience.
I agree with you. I mean, we talk about it a lot in conferences and things, and it's like, oh, yeah, men get breast cancer. And I'm like, wow, that must be a whole different set of psychological
It's like a
turmoil.
smack in the face.
Like
to
if we
a guy.
get testicular cancer.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
Okay.
a female can't get testicular cancer.
Right.
Why should I get breast cancer?
yeah, there you go.
But, we get testicular cancer. We're like, okay, this is something that can happen. We have them. It could happen, but
Yeah.
we don't have
You
breasts.
don't think about it for breasts.
We don't have, and I know people that have had that.
Yeah. I knew a young man who knew him not in my practice at home, where he had some trauma to his breast, and he had to go have a mammogram because after the trauma there was a lump there and it was just
Ooh.
bleeding and there was a swelling in there. And
You imagine the
he had a
names he
lump.
was called.
Oh,
But
Yeah, look at you. You're going to get a mammogram.
He told this story about his purple nurple for I mean,
Purple nurple. See, now, that's another thing with breasts. Purple nurples.
tune in Tokyo,
he
Are
talked
these things
about-
on, or I just wasted my time?
I'm sorry, doctor, but to hear a doctor, is that a medical term?
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's a medical term?
Oh yeah.
To hear a doctor say that, it's actually refreshing. It's actually refreshing to hear because
When you talk to a doctor, you think you're going to get straight cut. Doctor
Dr.
talk,
Marcus Welby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can go down that road.
Marcus Welby, MD.
I can go down that road, but you guys will be asleep.
Yeah, pretty much so.
So
I'm glad you're staying this way. I
But,
like
but
that.
the point is that this guy had to go have a mammogram and sit in the room with all the women in their bathrobes, and just that, and he didn't have cancer. He just had a bleeding into an area, and it got better by itself. He didn't have to do anything. So I can imagine male breast cancer. I haven't had a patient who has it.
Are we covering everything? Is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you take care of in your practice?
Well, I do all kinds of cosmetic surgery, and I do, which includes, tummy tucks and facelifts and things like that. So it's not just the breast anatomy. He's looking over at him.
I asked you if
You
you could do
ready?
anything about this yet.
I am accepting of the way that I am.
Yeah, that's why you grow a
there you
beard
go.
to hide your face.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of different body parts involved, not just breasts. I also take care of skin cancer, so that can be on any part of the body. So skin cancer is very common. And I do go on a surgical mission trip every year where we go to other countries, and I do surgery just on children. So that's a whole different aspect of my life and my practice, but I do that every year where
I do want to get into that.
Yeah,
I do want to get into
I
that.
do cleft lips and palates and lots of burn surgery. Horrible burns.
Why is it, and sorry to get off track, but why is it you see all these kids from all these different countries with like cleft lips?
Yeah, really interesting thing about that is that the prevalence of cleft lips, which is the one you can see, you can't really see the cleft palate, which is on the inside. The prevalence, the percentages of cleft lips in children in other countries is about the same as it is in the United States. It's just that they all get fixed here. So most people, if you think hard enough about like kids, or people, or maybe kids that were in your kids' classes, everybody probably knows someone who had one.
But got it taken care of early.
But they get fixed when they're little babies here, and then they get their dental work, and they get their hearing fixed, and they get their speech worked on, and they get all that stuff that you don't get when I showed up to Ghana in March of this year, and we hadn't been there for 2 years because of COVID since 2019. And there were kids were coming who were 10 years old who'd never had it fixed, and that's much more.
So now you could do like
You've seen it.
reconstruction on a cleft palate,
Yeah.
or cleft lip, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I put those all back together.
And then give them
again.
back some quality of life. But
Yep.
there is a sect of your profession which I take umbrage with for a little bit because there's some unethical practices. And
don't get me started.
There's people who are doing things where I just do, and we'll go specifically with the field of breasts.
Yeah.
I used to go to a gym with a woman, and she was an adult star, and she was about 5 foot tall and looked like she had basketballs on her chest. She looked absolutely ridiculous, and everything else in between was done. You know, the curling
lip
irons.
implants.
It looked awful. But she was an incredibly bright young woman, bright, like super smart. Drove a high-end Mercedes or something like that, and so when I got comfortable enough to ask her, I go, why? Like, why do you do that? Because she couldn't even do lat pull downs because the bar she would do like a half rep.
Yeah.
I said, why do you do this? She goes, because I make a lot of money doing this, and that's her exact answer to me.
Mm-hmm.
But some doctor put them in.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I don't mind that so much. When I have someone who I feel like their motivation makes sense to them and they're not going to end up on some psychiatrist's couch because they have it later on, because they understand what their motivation is, I don't have so much trouble with that. I have my personal aesthetic about the type of plastic surgery that I do. I think a lot of what you see on the street and you go, oh my God, what's that? Giant lips or giant breasts.
Or the asses now. You get the diaper ass.
I think a lot of that gets into the, there's a lot of money at stake with plastic surgery, right? So anywhere there's a lot of money at stake, there's a lot of abuse that can happen. But also that's part societal, right? Women are going in and asking for those things.
But do you ever say no?
I say no more than I say yes.
Really?
I was going to say, as someone that comes in with that wants these like oversized breasts,
I say more than I say yes.
Isn't it like a doctor overprescribing medication?
That's where I take umbrage.
Well, a doctor who makes those breasts that are way over large look like a clown, and lips that are way over large that no human being would ever, the butts that look so big that no human being would ever have those. It's almost like it's almost like you're a costume designer at that point. You're not really a plastic surgeon, right? You're doing something that doesn't look natural. It's not like what somebody, even a beautiful person, could be born with. I mean, Angelina Jolie has beautiful lips, but people were striving to get that.
But
I don't know, there was an ideal that people wanted to look that way, but her lips on me would look ridiculous, right? So that it doesn't matter. A lot of times people get focused on one thing.
You get that body dysmorphia, like a Michael Jackson situation. You're
right.
like, well, okay.
So again, the woman who has very large breasts because she's making money on it and it makes her happy and everybody's happy about it, I don't have any problem with that. But when you get into the body dysmorphic thing, when someone comes and I'm a little suspect about their own motivations, or I can tell instantaneously that this is never going to be the end of it, there's going to be something else and there's going to be something else. And what happens with someone who has that problem is that they obsess over something and they think that doing this quick surgical procedure is going to fix it.
It's going to fill that hole in them.
Yeah, and that hole's never filled, right?
It's like the people the women that want to look like Barbie dolls.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a pathology to that, right? Like that's not normal.
But there's always some doctor, if you're going to say no, there's some doctor that's going to say yes.
Yeah, and so there's that aspect where you say to
yourself... So are you losing money because that doctor's going to make the money?
To me, honest to God, it's not the money. To me, it is if I can do it correctly on this person, I know at least that they're not going to go somewhere where someone's going to hack them up and make a horrible job of it. So there's that. But I do, for my own self-preservation, I say no all the time.
They look like a Muppet with one nipple up, one nipple down.
Well, and that was a question I was leading up to. As a former police officer, I love watching the show Cops.
Right.
Because that's what we did. Did you ever watch the show Botched?
I've never seen Botched, but those guys are actually they're good at what they do, and they are
no, but the surgeons before
what they do.
Surgeons before weren't that good.
Yeah, so a lot of people, I call myself the botched breast surgeon of Bergen County because I do a lot of secondary revisions.
I was going to say, did you get? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so what I hear about those guys, it's hard for me to watch reality TV. I can't stand all the commercials and the nonsense. But I've heard that they're very good at what they do and that they really fix people and they do a good job of fixing people. But I have a similar attitude to that. A lot of plastic surgeons don't like doing secondary surgery, fixing somebody who's been
fixing someone else's
else.
I think every industry has those fixers.
That. Yeah, I love doing that.
Barbers have them. There's somebody who gets a jacked up haircut.
Fucked up haircut.
Some plastic surgeons won't touch somebody else's work.
I touch up his hair all the time.
So in the studio, just so you know, we have Tara
our own
and our own Eric Engelhart. They're here viewing, sitting behind Andrew. And they're laughing and stuff because we're talking about boobs. I'm watching them smile right now. Boobs.
Just keep saying boob and watch Eric go.
But that's where
his shoulders go down.
That's really where you become your ethics get involved. And is there anybody governing?
There's a lot.
Is there anybody governing the ethics of your field?
Well,
I
there
know
is
the
an
American
ethical body. Yeah, the American College of Plastic Surgery does have an ethical body. So if you do something really out there, you can get sanctioned.
sanctioned or what
no
happens?
one's sending you to jail, for doing it.
Because it's really mutilation.
Um,
you go to those third world countries.
so
They used
interesting.
they used to do They used to do circumcisions
Yeah,
on
it's
women.
so interesting because who knows? 50 years from now, we might think all breast augmentations are mutilation. They might look back at us and go, "What? They were putting bags in where?" We look at people who used to put arsenic on their face to make it pale, or cyanide, or whatever it was.
It was the arsenic to make their cheeks red.
Their cheeks, and we look at that and we go, "What are they, insane?" So someone somewhere is going to look back on this.
Things that are going on
crazy.
today, 100 years from now, they're going to say, like, "What are you, crazy?"
Right.
They're going to come up with a new theory that's going
Right.
to say, why'd you put silicone in there?
Yeah.
Why didn't you
So we
put...
all have to draw our own line, what we feel comfortable with. I think cosmetic surgery really is only done well when you don't know someone had it. That's my own personal aesthetic. That's my own personal aesthetic. I do, in order to be a patient who gets me to go past that, you have to give me a really good reason why. You have to give me a good reason that I'm comfortable with and that I think the patient will benefit from.
Because you're ethical.
Right.
Well, there's a misconception amongst women that in order to be attractive to their attracted sex, you see how I did that? You see how I danced around that?
Yeah, you danced right around that.
I danced right around that. You got to have women, in general, they have to have big boobs and they have to fill out a dress a certain way, when it's really not the case. It's really not the case.
And, maybe, sorry to disappoint you guys, but the breasts are getting smaller, and women are asking for smaller and smaller and smaller. That's a trend. I've been doing this for 24 years, and I will tell you that the sizes that women have been asking for, especially the younger women, they're asking for smaller sizes.
But that's like paying for a Mini Cooper when you can afford a Bentley.
See? Sorry to disappoint. I knew it would disappoint.
How many people have come to you that had these large breast implants?
Yeah.
Wanted them to take it out and get them smaller.
Well, that was a movie.
lot,
Did you ever see that HBO movie years ago called Breast Men? It was about the first people.
No, actually, I never saw that.
It was about the first people who really learned and popularized the breast implants, and they got sued left and right because they were putting in harmful chemicals. Women were getting cancer. And,
there's a really interesting thing about when plastic surgery sort of in its infancy, in the 70s, and when it all sort of started. And, it was all male plastic surgeons. It was all female patients. And I have had many patients who are in their 70s maybe, who had elective cosmetic surgery in the 70s, 80s. And they went to sleep and no one ever asked them what they wanted. No one ever asked them what surgery they were going to do. No one ever asked them what size they wanted to be. They woke up the way some
you get
male
what you get and you don't
plastic
get upset.
surgeon thought they should look.
That always cracked me up, though. You see someone like this whole sagging body, but their boobs are sticking out like this.
Yeah.
And so I find that fascinating that you could, that there are these lots of women out there who they were never asked what size they wanted to be. So a lot of those people will come and they'll ask.
Wasn't there
to be
consultations before it? And don't you go through like the different size bags?
Well, it didn't really used to be.
bag.
Nowadays it's
bag.
very
different size
different.
bags.
It's like you're at ShopRite. No, I need the bigger bag. I got a lot of groceries.
They go in my office and they try on the different sizes.
And you didn't bring a sample.
Do you call them bags or different size implants?
They're sizers.
They're sizers.
Okay.
But-
size bags.
But
I'm sorry.
Body types change over time.
Yeah.
If you look at, they would call them Rubenesque women's, because Ruben was the artist who they were very
They were
full-figured
round
women.
and big hips
And if you looked at the women in the 80s, it was beanpole. Now it's more heading towards that Rubenesque style, where the bigger butts and the smaller waists and stuff like that. So. That's the problem I have with any cosmetic procedure, because it's a trend. It's like buying a pair of Cavaricci jeans, and in 10 years, they're no good. You know what you had plenty of pairs. I was too poor to afford them, but you had plenty of pairs of Cavariccis.
You wore your Capizios with them too.
Oh, okay. All right.
And
See,
your
I didn't have
members only jacket. Come on, man.
You were the only member.
Hey, listen. Exactly.
But it seems like this never-ending thing, because those women coming in for the bigger breasts several years ago are now coming in to get them reduced, because that's the trend.
Yes.
Where now we have this opportunity in this day and age we live in order to choose that. You're not born. The way you're born doesn't mean that's the way you end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, women can come in and ask for them bigger and then come back 3 years later and ask for them smaller. You certainly can do that. That's what, they used to have an adjustable size implant that you could put in.
Like the Reebok pump.
And I would refuse over and over again to put those in because if you decided Thursday that you wanted a different size from what you were Tuesday, I don't want to have any part of it.
They're going out
I
this
don't wanna
weekend,
have
so they
any
want
part-
huge breasts, and
I
on
don't wanna
Monday they're
have
going to
any
come
part
back
of it.
and they're going to say, I want smaller now.
They had adjustable size.
Now,
that you could
if
put.
you do, I guess it's a reduction, an implant reduction, would that?
If I put a smaller implant in?
If they come in with bigger ones and they come in, they
Yeah.
want smaller ones. You have to cut out the skin and all that because
Most of the time.
They attach, right?
Most of the time. So it's not a without consequences because there's scars involved in that.
Yeah.
Well, so you probably get this question quite a bit.
Well, here we go.
What is the oddest request you've ever gotten? I know you've gotten this one.